एवरीवन, मैं वंदना आप सबका यूपीएससी टाइम में स्वागत करती हूँ। आज की वीडियो में हम एनसीईआरटी हिस्ट्री 9th क्लास का चैप्टर 5 देखने वाले हैं, जो कि पेस्ट्रोलिस्ट इन अ मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड। पेस्ट्रोलिस्ट क्या होते हैं कि वो लोग जो चरवाहे यानी घूम फिर के खेती करते हैं और कॉलोनिकल रूल में नहीं रहते और अपना आजीविका कमाते हैं। नाउ लेट्स स्टार्ट द चैप्टर। Now let's begin with the pastoralist in North India. Here we will deal about the pastoralism in North, South, and East India and how they live, live, etc. Even today, the Gujar Bakarwal of the Jammu Kashmir are the great herder of the goat sheep in the winter when the high mountains were covered with the snow. They lived with their herds in the low hills of the Shivalik range. The dry scrub here provide pasture for their cattle. By the end of March, they moved to the north for their summer ground. Several households came together for their journey known as Kafila. Gaddi shepherds of the Himachal Pradesh had similar cycle of seasonal movement. They spent their winter in the low hills of Shivalik range and spent their summer in the north in a Lothal and the Spiti. Pastoralists in East India in a Garhwal and the Kumaon, the Gujjar cattle herder come down to the dry forest of Bhabbar in winter and summer. The highest meadows of the Bugyal, Bhotia, Sherpas and Kinalus of the Himalaya adjust to seasonal changes and make effective use of available pasture in India places. On the plateau and the plains and the desert, Thangras of the Maharashtra in the early 12th century, they were 46 crore 70 thousand 46,70,000 shepherds, blanket weavers, and the buffalo herder. During the monsoon, they stayed in a central plateau of the Maharashtra, a semi-arid region, low rainfall, soil covered with a thorny scrub. Only bajra could be sown here. During the monsoon, they had vast grazing ground. By October, they harvested their bajra and moved to the west. Konkan covered a month's march into a flourishing agriculture tacked with a rich soil. Konkan peasants harvested their crop till then. Dhangar flock manured their field and fed on a stubble. Konkan gave them supplies of rice, which was useful for them and the months of secretive plateaus. Golan in Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, Golas herds cattle, Kurumas and Kurbas reared sheep and goat and sold woven blanket. In a dry season, they moved into a coastal area and during rain came back. Banjara of the UP, Punjab, Rajasthan, MP moved long distance selling plough cattle in exchange for the grains and fodder. Raikas lived in the desert of Rajasthan during monsoon. Raikas of the Barmar, Jaisalmer, Jodhpur and Bikaner stayed in their home. By October, ground were exhausted. They moved out in a search of pasture and the water. They had to judge how long the herds could stay in the area and know where they could find water and the pasture. Colonial rule and the pastoral life. During the colonial rule, pastoral life changed dramatically. Grazing ground slackened, movement regulated, had to pay more revenues to the government. The government wanted all grazing land formed into the cultivated lands for the more revenues. By mid-19th century, wasteland rule were enacted and such land were given to the individuals. So expansion of agriculture meant the decline of the pasture. Pastoralism in America. Half of the world population of pastoral live in Africa. Over 22 million Africans depend on the pastoralism one way or the other. They are the Bedouins, Berber, Messines, Somalis, and Burans of the Turkana. Mosai cattle herder in East Africa. There are almost 3 lakh pastoralists lived in southern Kenya and 15 lakh in Tanzania. Where have the grazing land gone? Before the colonial time, they stretched from the North Kenya to Stephen to the north Tanzania. The best grazing land were gradually taken over for a white settlement and the censuses were published into a small area of the South Kenya and the North Tanzania. The censuses lost their 60% area of the pre-colonial land, and now they had an arid zone with a poor posture and uncertain rainfall. Cultivation was encouraged, and the pasture land were turned into the cultivated land. Large areas were also turned into the game reserve like Masai Mara and the Samburu National Park in Kenya and the Serengeti Park in Tanzania. Serengeti Park in Tanzania was created over a 40,760 kilometers of Masai grazing land. What was the result of the loss of the finest grazing land and the water resources created pressure on the small area and thus the deterioration of the equality of the posture and the shortage of forage. The borders are closed. From the late 19th century, the colonial government imposed various restrictions on their movement. They were allowed to move within the confines of special reserve and not without permit, and it was difficult to get permit without the trouble. If found disobeying, they were severely punished. They were not allowed to enter into the white area as were seen by the dangerous and the serious colonial had to depend on them many times for the bone mines, build roads. The restrictions severely affected their pastoral and the trading activities. When the pastures dry, traditionally pastoralists are the nomadic because nomadism allow them to survive bad time and avoid crisis. Masais could not shift their cattle the place where pasture were available due to the restrictions, so a large number of their cattle died due to the starvation and the disease. Not all were equally effective. Masai society were divided into two categories: elder and the warrior. Elder formed the ruling group and the settled community dispute, and the warrior, the younger people, were responsible for protection of the community, the race of other community, and participate in the war to administer the affair of the Masai. The colonial government appointed chief. The chief had a regular income with which they could buy animal, good land. They also lent money to the poor peasant. Thus, they become very rich. Most of these chiefs lived in a town and stayed their wives and children back to the village to look after the animal. But the poor pastoralist had no resources to tide over the bad time. They had to go to the town and find work. The forest which produce streams like deodar and the sal, devdar and the sal, these are the name of the trees. Some customary right were granted to a pastoralist, but their mobility was restricted severely. Colonial officials believed that the grazing destroys sapling and the herds templated and much away the shoots. In the area they were allowed to enter, they needed a permit for entry. Days and the timing of their entry and the departure were specific. Official wanted settled population in a fixed placement to the rule from the properly. In 1971, the colonial government passed the Criminal Tribes Act. Many nomads were declared criminal tribes. They should move out of their village with a permanent only grazing tax imposed between 1850 to 1880. Right to collect such tax was uh, authentic but the contractor. How these changes affect the lives of the pastoralist. Continuous grazing on the limited area led to decline in equality of the posture, and also intensive grazing of limited field created shortage of forage and the deterioration of the animal stock. How pastoralists cope with these changes. Reduced stock of animals, discover new field of grazing after 1947. Raikas of Rajasthan could not graze their camel on the bank of the Indus Sindh, so they moved to Haryana. After harvesting the field, they require manure and they fulfill their needs. Some richer pastoralists purchased land and settled there. Other pastoralists took loans, become poor, and started doing labor, combined their activities with other resources of income. What was the conclusion with that? Many pastoralist communists adapted to a new times. They changed the paths for the animal movement. They reduced the number of cattle. They passed for right to enter in new areas. They exerted political pressure of the government for a direct subsidy and other form of report. Environmentalists recognized that the pastoralist to many hill and the dry region of the world. With this, our this chapter is complete. If you have a query of related to this chapter or a subject, you can ask in the comment box. If you are new in on this channel, so please subscribe the channel and play the bell icon for the notification, and stay tuned to the chapter, and thanks for watching the chapter.